mezzotint was the original method of reproducing continuous tone. And it's an image unlike no other. There's no shortcuts with it. It just takes as long as it takes. But at the same time, I think it's important to update that and to put it into context with what's happening today. Because there are faster methods of reproduction. So the question becomes, well, how is this relevant today, and how can I make it common on today's society? Mezzotint is a form of intaglio printmaking, and this is a mezzotint rocker. And what this tool does is it puts tiny pits and burrs in the copper plate. And the goal is to turn the piece of copper, that's a polished piece of copper, into basically like a piece of copper sandpaper. And when you're printing it through an etching press, then the pits and burrs hold the intaglio ink. So you push ink into the grooves of the plate and wipe the surface clean, and that creates the darks and lights of the final print. So when you're working the plate, it starts out as a perfectly black image with all of the pits and burrs. And you work with the reflected light and tools called scrapers and burnishes to slowly scrape away the copper burrs or burnish down and push down the burrs. So basically you're flattening the roughened up surface of the metal. And through that you're able to get the continuous tone image. When I'm ready to start the plate work, I take either my drawing, or if I'm doing a computer image first, where I composite first in Photoshop, I'll print out a lot of times a small image that's in the reverse of what I want it to look like when it's printed. And then I transfer that to the plate using carbon paper, the old-fashioned carbon paper that they used to use with typewriters. And it works really well for transferring the image down to the plate. And then once I have the image transferred on the plate, mostly I use this tool here. And this is a small 3-sided scraper to do the plate work, because the reflection that you see is pretty true to what it's going to look like when it prints. Where if you see just a small bit of a reflection, then that would give you a light gray. Medium tone gives you a medium value gray. And then as you scrape all the way down to the reflective copper, that gives you your whitest whites. And when you're working the light tones, you have to, a lot of times, scrape the metal in a few different directions to try to make sure that the scraper marks don't end up printing. And then afterwards, if I'm working an image that has a lot of highlights in it, I'll use the burnisher afterwards to put a high polish on the metal. So it takes quite a while for me to work the plate. It's usually about an hour a square inch, so I work pretty slowly. Sometimes I'll work the general tones first, and then I'll start pulling out the details. Sometimes I'll start with the brightest whites so I can see the contrast of the values that are in the final image. It really just depends on the image for where I start. One more thing about the mezzotint rockers, they come in different sizes. So most of the time when I'm rocking plates, I use my large rocker. And this is a 6-inch rocker with some weights on it. Rockers come in different widths and also different gauges. Most of the rockers that I use are 85 dots per inch. And that gives you a medium ground where it's pretty easy still to work the plate, to pull out the lights, because the depth of the teeth, how far they go into the metal, that's how far you have to scrape back into the copper then to get to the lights. I began making work and I was very much interested in representation, and I think that's still a thread that's continued throughout all of the work that I've made. interested in the way that I can see the world and I can present that to the viewer. And when I first made a series of work that I felt was a mature body of work, it was small setups that I had that were based on still life, so the tradition of still life. And I was making some changes in the work that were different than the way that the eye could see or that the camera could see. So it could only be presented to people through drawing, basically. And through mezzotint is mostly how I was working as well, because I liked the stark contrast that you got and the glow of the paper and how that was coming through and holding the imagery. So a lot of times I'll pair drawing with photography or drawing with ways that the computer or other technology can present the world. And I enjoy trying to show people things that they might overlook, so some of the quiet moments of life. And I started to really think about the relationship that I had with nature and the history of still life also. So I was doing some research in the language of still life and what artists at the time were trying to say. So like traditional breakfast pieces and commenting on society. And I was trying to think about how I could translate that to my day and age, so to my environment, and specifically the surroundings that I had. I remember there was one instance I was walking by this person's house and they had fake flowers planted outside, and they were so excited about it because no matter what time of year it was, there would be these beautiful flowers that were there. And I thought, that's the kind of thing that I want to capture. And the litter and the debris and using some of those images then to talk also about the larger issues of society, like ideas of worth and value, ideas of class, so talking symbolically through the language of flowers, which is something that a lot of traditional still life artists back in the 17th century, they were doing, but in a very different way. And so I was trying to do it more based in my current time. So one piece that I had in particular, it was a separation of above and below, and above was a digital print of fake flowers, and the barcodes were still on the flowers, and there was a fake sky in the background that I created in the computer. And then below was a mezzotint that was hand-drawn, and they were from photographs I had taken from the landscape that was right around the house I was living in at the time. So having that type of symbolism buried in the image. So it becomes a very layered process, and I hope that the images can reveal themselves slowly over time, where when you first look at them, you're confronted by this world, and then as you look a little bit closer, it slowly unveils itself with different levels of meaning. I got a job at California State University, Northridge, and moved to a city where the size of the school was larger than the size of the town I had been living in. So it was a big change of pace for me. And that was like the ultimate view of what happens when nature and culture collide. So my artwork changed again, my situation changed. I moved here in 2011, I believe, so I've been here just about 5 years. And my concerns changed a little bit also. I started thinking about the place where the land and the sea are meeting, so where the Pacific Ocean meets the continental United States. And I started making work that was based on water ecology and water issues. I was also a lot more aware of the drought, because there's definitely a significant drought, and the concerns about water and water usage were a lot more prevalent here. So I wanted to put a little bit of that into my work, a little bit dealing with the place and also some of the environmental concerns that were really prescient here in Los Angeles. A couple years ago, I got an iPhone and I started playing around with the panorama feature. And it started just taking some pictures while I was a passenger, and it turned into the series that I've been working on the past 2 years. My most recent mezzotint prints are based on highway imagery, and so I'll take some of these panoramas that capture moments through time. And so it's one image, but it's capturing several locations and also an expanse of time, and I'm able to capture that in one image. Printmaking has afforded me the ability to think in reverse. So I think about the final result that I'm interested in and the steps that I need to take in order to get there. And then I also try to think about the places that I can experiment along the way and how that level of experimentation will add a voice to the final image.